Hi, this is Cricket Quast with JK Bell Events. I'm back today to talk to you about budgeting for your wedding and things that you may not be thinking about when you're coming up with your budget. So the first thing you need to do can be awkward and tough, but it is figuring out how much you are going to be able to have in your budget by talking to both the bride's family and the groom's family. Traditionally in the past, most of the budget has come from the bride's side of the family, but times have changed and it's completely acceptable to ask the groom's side of the family what all they can help contribute as well. Along with bride and groom's family is often the couple will help contribute too. So you need to factor in how much the bride's family will be able to contribute, how much the groom's family can contribute, and how much you as a couple will contribute. So once you have the amount of your budget, you then can start planning and figuring out exactly how much will go to what category. So there's some things I want you to think about and consider when you're coming up with your budget. The cost of things can vary depending on the type of wedding you have. If you're having a backyard wedding, it's obviously going to be a very different amount than if you're having a formal wedding in a ballroom. So you need to think about those things when you are knowing that what you have to spend, what kind of wedding you want, and what you can actually afford. Also, how big your guest list is. So almost the very beginning, before you even ask for budget, you can start coming up with your list of guests. It doesn't have to have exact names of people, but if you know that there's a family coming that has 5 people, you can put that family's name plus 5. So you know, because a wedding of 200 is very different than a wedding of 75. So knowing how many people you have on your guest list and how many you anticipate coming can make a huge difference in what places you are setting up for your venues. So also, it makes a difference, obviously, the places of per head, how much it is. If it's a venue that has food and drinks included, per head may be more than a place where you're bringing the food in, and you have to then add that in. So also, when you're looking for venues or even vendors, different parts of town that you are looking, if you're getting, I live in Fort Worth, let's say Fort Worth. If we're having a wedding in Fort Worth, it may be very different than a smaller town nearby. It just depends on the town, in a small business compared to a business that's bigger and has been around for a long time. So the parts of town make a difference in the cost of things that you can think about when you're budgeting, and also the time of year and the day. So most venues will have a different cost for, I will say all. I don't think I've ever come across one that hasn't had different prices for the time of year and the day. So during the peak seasons, it's going to be a higher price. On a Saturday and Sunday, or Friday night, Saturday, is going to be a little bit higher price than maybe a Sunday or a Thursday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So if budget is not as big as you would like it to be, you may want to think about the day and time of your wedding. So having a wedding in September, October, which is one of the peak times, may not be as cost effective as having it in January. So those are all things you can think about when you're looking at your budget and how much you have to spend on each part of your wedding. Also, the type of wedding, like I said before, whether it's formal in a ballroom or in a backyard of your parents' home, is going to be very different in how much you have to spend. When you're doing a wedding, say in a backyard, you may have to think about more details than you would otherwise in a venue, such as if you're having a tent, if you're having to rent tables and chairs and linens and everything else. So the type of wedding you have, you need to think about. A more formal wedding may be more because often it's at night. You may need to get some extra lighting, and the more elaborate it is, the more grandeur it is. So those are all things you need to think about when you are coming up with your budget and how much you're wanting to spend on each category of your wedding. Also, I want you to think about, what is the one part of my wedding that I would rather spend more money on than anything else? If music is really important to you because you're wanting people to have a really good time and dancing, and you want a band compared to a DJ, and you know you want to spend a little bit more money on that, then and flowers aren't as important to you, then go a little bit heavier on your budget for the music than for the flowers. So think about, what is it, the one thing that you love the most? For instance, I love cake, so maybe I'm going to put more budget towards my cake because I want that to be really good. I'm not saying I would do that, but just an example. So those are all things. And so now I want to talk to you about some facts and tips to think about when you are making your budget as well. So there are often some little hidden costs that you don't think about when you are setting up your budget. Some of those things can include tipping your vendors. Any vendor that comes to your event, you're going to want to tip. The flowers, bringing the cake, if you have an off-duty police officer for security that you're having to have, your DJ, every vendor you should be tipping some. So make sure that you're including that in your budget. And sometimes you go over your budget a little bit because those are the things you don't think about. So definitely tipping. If you're going to have a wedding planner, you want to consider, think about 5 to 10% of what your budget is. That depends on if you're having someone that's just doing a month of coordination for you, or if you are having someone help you do most of the planning. So it just depends on what level you're getting help from your wedding planner. I want you to remember too, even though that sounds like it's a little bit extra, and this is no plug for me, sometimes when you use a wedding planner, you get better deals from vendors. You just do. It's there's just a relationship there, and sometimes they will give you a little bit better deal. So even though you might be using a wedding planner and you think it might be costing you more, you might actually be saving more in the end. So something to think about. But it is a cost that you want to factor into your budget. And then I also want to talk about the percentage of wedding costs. So the biggest expense, percentage-wise, of your wedding will most likely be your reception. So your venue and the food and the drinks, the cake, that is about 50% of your budget. So I want you to really think about that when you are figuring out where you're going to have it and what all that includes. Also, part of that percentage is video and photography is about 10 to 12%. And you can find this all on the internet somewhere, but I'm just would like to include this so you kind of have an idea of when I'm talking about things. Flowers are about 8 to 10%. Stationery, so your invitations, your thank you notes, are about 2 to 3. Your ceremony, if you're having it somewhere besides where your reception is about a 2 to 3%. Your attire, so your wedding dress, your tuxes, are about 8 to 10. There's ways to get, when you're coming with your budget, there's things you can do to really help in your budget and spend less. For instance, there are some really great consignment shops for wedding dresses, and they're beautiful. They've most likely only been worn once, maybe twice if you had portraits done. So don't be afraid to try and cut costs there as well. It's new to you, and there's some good karma there too, probably, if the dress is at this beautiful shop. Rings, if you are paying for your weddings and not having one passed down to you, that is about 2 to 3% as well. Gifts and miscellaneous, so favors and just any miscellaneous stuff that you need for the wedding. There's always little things that you forget that you need for your wedding, so that's about 2 to 3%. No, that's more like about 8%, sorry. The planner I said earlier, 5 to 10%. And then parking and transportation. If you are taking a limo to one place to another to get to the reception, or if you're providing transportation for your guests afterwards, a shuttle from the hotel to the venue, any of that, that's about 2 to 3%. That's actually a really easy place to save some money on your budget, is to use your own vehicles. But that is how that is broken down. I think I said flowers. Okay. Extra tips that I want to share with you. I think I already said it, but plan on going over your budget some. There's some hidden costs that you don't think about. So if you're saying your budget is $30,000, in your mind, kind of think that it's about $32,000. Just there's gonna be some hidden costs there. Example, like the tips, as well as I said earlier. Also, things such as when you're sending out your invitations, there's stamps that may not be something you thought about in your in your budget, so that is an extra expense you might be thinking of. Another fun tip is if you use one credit card for your budget or for all the stuff for your wedding, you can get rewards, and it helps you keep track of how much you actually are spending on your wedding. So that is a good way to, a good tip for you too. And then get creative and do some things for yourself. So I hope that has helped. Please go back and watch some of my other videos that are on my YouTube channel that should be helpful to you. I hope this helped, and I will talk to you later.